can I ask our keynote listeners to join me by sharing their audio and video? And I'm just going to let the keynote listeners join in so that we can give them a chance to share what they have heard throughout the keynote from Ruth Levine and then the parallel sessions.
Good evening from Germany. It's almost evening here. I'm Regine Wehner. I'm working for the Robert Bosch Foundation in Germany, and I'm working in the unit of strategic partnerships, which means that we have strategic partnerships with think tanks. This department was only created at the beginning of this year. Before, as it was mentioned in some sessions, we've been working with think tanks on a project basis, and now we've moved to strategic partnerships, so to core funding for longer periods than just a couple of months.
Great, thank you. Why don't we move slightly east to Greece?
Hi, Enrique. Janis Emmanouilidis, my name. I am now in Greece, but usually I'm in Brussels. I'm Director of Studies at the European Policy Center, which is based in Brussels, generalist think tank dealing with EU affairs. Given that we are in Brussels, that's obviously no surprise. And I have been witnessing the past hours, which have been very interesting. So I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you. And then we'll move further east to India.
Thank you, Enrique. My name is Gurucharan. I'm in Bangalore in India, the south of India. It's about 11:30 now. It's about 11 o'clock now, but that's okay. Like I said, I've enjoyed both the sessions. I'm the director of the Public Affairs Center. It's a policy research think tank. We work primarily in sustainable development in the context of public governance. And one of our big strengths is that we use data analytics and data science applications to public governance. Probably one of the few think tanks, at least in India, which actually tries to leverage the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence to try and help improve public governance. Our focus is primarily in three areas. One is on public health. The second is on gender, women and children. And the third is on school education. We believe these three are the areas that India needs to face as the major challenges. And so we partner both the government of India, the federal government, as well as the provincial governments in most of our projects. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And let's move way east to the west of the U.S. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Luke from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. I work on an area of grant making that we call evidence-informed policy making, the goal of which is to support governments, particularly in East and West Africa, to make better use of policy research and data and evaluation findings, other forms of evidence. And we tend to take a field building orientation towards our work, and so really excited about supporting kind of the broader strength of the think tank sector, including support to OTT. So really fun to be part of today's discussion. Thanks.
Thank you all. And I'm hoping that Pamela Nakamba from SIPAR, think tank in Zambia, might be able to join us at any time. So the idea of this session, what we usually do is we invite the conveners or facilitators of the parallel sessions for a reflection, but someone gave us this idea of keynote listeners. And so rather than asking our keynote listeners to give us their opinion or come up with great analysis, which I'm sure they can do of what they heard, we just want them to identify, act as sort of curators for us. Identify something you heard, if you read, or you watched, and just convey it to us. What is it worth going back the videos for that you think we should be taking with us? So why don't I start with Regine, same order, and ask, is there anything, a few things that you heard, that you read, that you think that was particularly interesting, and we should talk more about that? or I'd like to follow up on that idea. So you're muted, I think.
I thought that would never happen to me. Yeah, I really liked Ruth Levine's talk on the boundary crosses, think tanks as boundary crosses, because it very much reminds me of our role as a private foundation as well. So she highlighted that it is a delicate thing to be commentator on for the public on the one day and then be the policy advisor on the next day. But this is actually, I mean, the chance of think tanks, that being in this sector in between and connecting the different sectors, and foundations face similar challenges. We connect civil society with the media, with the public and the private sector. And at the same time, we have the risk of being partisan, because we risk our non-profit status by being partisan. And non-partisan is for us a very delicate thing that we have to think about. So this really reminded me of the of discussions that we have internally in the philanthropy sector as well, which I found very interesting.
Great, thank you. Janis, move to Greece.
I have a couple of reflections following what I heard, and I think which is worth taking with us. Let me start with the first one, which is related to long-term strategic partnerships, which has been mentioned now for a couple of times. Regine mentioned it when she was introducing herself, but also when I went to different sessions, when I was listening to Ruth. Long-term strategic partnerships is something which I think is of a very immense value. And it is of immense value, especially if it leads to, I would call it a balanced relationship between funders and think tanks. And a balanced relationship means that it is a two-way street, that you listen to both sides of what they have in mind, which also means that from the perspective of think tanks, that you need to be more self-confident about yourself. And that's something which we heard from Ruth, but also others saying, I take that with me. Second point is, it relates to the COVID-19 situation. We've heard that obviously COVID-19 situation has changed the environment in which we are all operating. But it is something, I think, which we are not still aware of all the potential consequences of the situation. The economic consequences, which will also hit think tanks, I think, with a certain time lag, and the political consequences. And this is something which I think we need to think more about, both in terms of the opportunities, because I was listening and I heard a lot of things which were related to COVID-19, which were negative. But I think there are also a lot of opportunities which the experience which we have gone through over the past 6-8 months, and we will be continued to go through, which we need to take with us. But the other thing is, and that's the negative part of the COVID-19 experience, is something which Ada was referring to when she was saying we need to be ready to walk out. Because I think that we will increasingly see that think tanks will get under pressure from what Ruth was calling bad governments, which is a very vague term which you need to define more clearly, but also let's call them bad companies, to take what Ruth was saying. And I think that because of COVID-19, the effects of it, the pressure will be increasing from bad governments and bad companies, which means that we as think tankers need to be ready to step out of a corporation, to walk out. Exactly. And I think we need to be really careful that we do that, despite the fact that under crisis pressure, we might not be ready or able to do it. If you allow me to share one more thought, if that's okay with you. I think we need to...
I'll allow you, yes.
Okay, and then I'll stop. I have more than that, but I'll just give me time for one more thought. When you listen and you go through the different sessions, which was very helpful because you had different think tankers also expressing their opinions, I think we need to be really careful that we don't, and that's a general point, we should be careful not to put all think tanks into the same box, especially when we come up with ideas of what needs to be done. What I mean by that is that we are operating in very specific environments. If you take an example between the environment in the US, the environment you feel not in the US, where the think tank scene is very different if you look into Europe, but also in Europe itself, for example, think tanks like the one I'm at, which works in the Brussels bubble, as many say, operate in a very different environment to what national think tanks are experiencing. This is not my first think tank I'm working at, so I'm talking by experience. So you need to take that into account, and also the nature of think tanks. So when you come up with ideas of what needs to be done, and I think Ruth was very strong in all the ideas he was suggesting, we always have to have the differences of think tanks in terms of the environment and their nature in mind when we talk about what should we do in terms of ethical standards and how to deal with them.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. Gurucharan, what about your key listenings, learnings?
I thought Ruth's presentation was excellent. I mean, many of the points that she made resonated for me because they're very relevant to India's context. And the one that I would pick out is how to address or how to mitigate the risks, the political risks of the integrity of your research being compromised. And how she emphasized the importance of good, reliable, valid data and evidence-based conclusions. And this resonated especially because we've just come out with our flagship annual publication, which is called the Public Affairs Index, which actually ranks all the 30 states of India on the quality and adequacy of governance at the subnational level. And it's interesting that, the 30 states, the top 5 states commended the report and made all the headlines because all the chief ministers of the states endorsed the report and said that Public Affairs Center has done a great job. And then you had the bottom 5 states actually saying that this is a very biased report and, so on and so forth. What we actually then did was we put out some FAQs and we put it out in the public domain that first and foremost, this is not funded by anybody. We have funded it ourselves. So that gives us legitimacy and we're not influenced by anybody. And second, that the data that we used, the indicators that we used to develop the composite index are so transparent and the model self-driven in terms of being data framework, that's what gave us legitimacy. And today, in the last 10 days, it's received very wide recognition across academia, research organizations, foundations, and so on. So I think it's very important for all think tanks across the world engaged in policy research or research, action research, to ensure very high ethical standards on the basis of transparency of the data and methods that we use. Second was the question that you raised, actually, Enrique, on how does think tank deal with its ideological position? Does it say that it's agnostic, politically agnostic, that it doesn't have a political position, or does it actually declare? And your view was that to say that evidence drives us can only take you that far, because underlying your work, there must be some kind of a political position. And that set me thinking because, we are 26 years old, and for the last 25 years, we have been saying that we are apolitical, we are independent, we are politically neutral. But after what you said, I was just thinking about it and I realized that if we are partnering governments, we believe that scale comes from government. If I was to demonstrate proof of concept of an intervention in action research and bring in an innovation to actually make it work at scale and replicate it across the country, I need the government. So ideologically, I think our position is that we don't work as adversaries of the government, but indeed equally, not as collaborators with the government. It's a very delicate balance that we walk the razor's edge, as it were. And like Janis just said, we're always ready to walk away should the government turn renegade or become bad, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Yeah, hi. Well, my first takeaway is that I love the Hopin platform. I'd never used it before, and it's really great. Like, it most emulates being in an actual conference where you're checking out the booths for a few minutes, and then you're hopping into one conference room and hopping into the other. I'm not sure it makes the most coherent experience, but it emulates real life best. So I've really enjoyed being on the platform today. But my main takeaway is really one that Janis and Gurucharan have already touched on, which is the importance of saying no. Ruth touched on this in her remarks, both about saying no to funders. In the simplest form, if a project is designed that seems too narrow relative to your perception of what the scope should be, or if funders seem to be seeking a particular outcome before you've even started the research, those are obvious reasons to say no. But I really liked Alba's expansion on thinking about when and how to say no to funders. She talked a lot about this notion of doing due diligence about your funders. So, for example, if it's a corporate, not only looking at the values behind the project that they want to support you to do, but the values behind their other activities, and do they align institutionally with your own values. So I really liked that kind of more expansive thinking and really putting more power in the hands of think tanks to do due diligence on funders. It kind of flips the tables a little bit in a way that I like. It's really, I would strongly encourage think tanks to take that mentality. So I really like that expansiveness. But the second area of where to say no is to government engagement. And Ruth really made this point about governments that are acting badly, behaving badly, either in the sector in which you are focusing your work or outside of the sector where you're focusing your work, and how to navigate that line between when and how to decide whether or not to engage with governments, and when to just say no. If you believe that your engagement is either turning a blind eye to or possibly even enabling behaviors that you don't think are societally beneficial or acceptable. So I really just like this empowering message of thinking hard about when to say no, both to funders and governments. That's my main takeaway.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm mindful that Regine, you did exactly what I said, and you shared one takeaway. But do you want to get another go and share something else?
Yes, of course.
It usually happens with the first person to go, right? You go by the rules, and then everybody else kind of is more flexible. So I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. I would like to highlight what Sarah just said, and on Alba Gomez comment on the due diligence on funders. And I have to say that also from the perspective of a funder, it is a very good quality of a think tank that a think tank does these checks, because then of course you would, as a funder, you want to fund think tanks that have good funding sources. So I think that is very important, and also a certain level of self-confidence was also raised in the discussion, that think tanks should present themselves and highlight what their values are and highlight what their mission is. And it's not enough to look at the website. I mean, we experience that many times when we look at websites and then have a meeting with think tanks, that sometimes it's very different. And to be really honest on what you want to achieve, I think to have this kind of transparency from both sides is key to a very successful partnership in the end.
Great, thank you. And I'm gonna raise an issue I heard from the ethics and research session that Cristina Bacalzo has put perfectly in words. So I'll just say what she wrote. Policy research is ultimately about people's lives and societies, and demands the same ethical reflection that we would apply to clinical or medical research. I think I get the sense that we're slowly kind of waking up to the idea that when we study other people and experiment on them through our interventions, as much as we have great intentions, we have to be very careful about the effect this has on them, especially on the most vulnerable. So that was day one of our third online event of 2020. Thank you very much. Stay online and stay connected, and see you soon. Thank you.